I still remember the exact moment she said it. We were standing in the living room I had poured my heart into. White oak floors I refinished with my own hands, the antique mirror I drove 6 hours to find, even the faint lavender scent in the air from the diffuser. I always kept going. And she said, without blinking, "This place? Oh, it's mine. Always has been." I blinked. I thought she was joking. But her smirk told me otherwise. My cousin Madison turned to the others in the room, our family, some mutual friends, even the lawyer, and added, "She's just confused. The paperwork was never really in her name." My ears rang. My chest went hollow. This was the home I had bought after working 2 jobs for nearly 7 years. The one I'd finally moved into after surviving the worst breakup of my life. And now, my own family was watching her rewrite history right in front of me. But what she didn't know was that I had it all recorded. Every lie, every confession, every deal she thought was off the record. Have you ever had someone steal your truth while looking you dead in the eyes? Madison and I used to be inseparable. As far back as I can remember, she was always just there, like an extra limb, an extension of my childhood. We grew up 3 streets apart in a small town in northern Georgia called Maplebrook. Quiet, friendly, everyone knew everyone. The kind of place where bikes cluttered front porches and iced tea flowed like water on Sunday afternoons. She was technically my cousin. Her dad, Doug, was my mother's younger brother. But the bond we had made us feel more like sisters. We were born only 8 months apart. I was older, but Madison was always the louder one. The bolder one. The one who walked into a room and took it over without trying. And I never minded. Not then. When we were little, we used to build forts in my grandmother's backyard. Nana Rose, my maternal grandmother, would come out with a tray of lemonade and those molasses cookies she used to make, and we'd pretend we were royalty defending our castle from invaders. Nana would play along, waving a wooden spoon and shouting, "Protect the kingdom." It's such a soft memory, the kind you don't realize you'll need later. Nana was our anchor, our holiday maker. Every Thanksgiving, her old colonial-style house would smell like pumpkin pie and cinnamon, with classic jazz playing on the radio and the old grandfather clock chiming in the hallway. She'd always say, "This house will be yours girls one day. Both of you. But it has to be earned." That phrase stuck with me. It wasn't until I was about 17 that I began to notice how different Madison and I were becoming. I was quiet, driven, and cautious. I loved school. Loved writing. I kept journals hidden under my mattress and dreamed of going to college up north, someplace where it snowed, where I could breathe without everyone knowing my business. Madison? She was always chasing excitement. Boys, parties, fashion shows in Atlanta, whatever gave her attention. She wasn't cruel, not then, but she had a way of making everything about her. If we were both complimented, she'd find a way to redirect the spotlight entirely onto herself. I brushed it off. We were teenagers. When I left for college in Boston, Madison stayed in Maplebrook and got into real estate. She was good at it too, charming, persuasive, and just manipulative enough to close a deal. Meanwhile, I struggled through college working 2 jobs, waitressing and tutoring English. Every dollar was sacred. Every semester was a mountain. We stayed in touch, kind of. She'd call occasionally, usually to gossip or drop some dramatic story about a guy or a client. She never asked how I was doing, really. Not in the way that mattered. But I missed home, and her voice still felt like a piece of it. My connection to Nana kept me grounded. We wrote letters, old-fashioned, handwritten ones. She'd slip $20 bills between the pages sometimes with notes like, "For coffee, not textbooks." When I graduated, she sent me a bracelet that had belonged to her mother. "You'll have the house one day," she wrote in that letter. "But not because you're older. Because you've always seen it as a home, not a trophy." That meant everything to me. In my mid-20s, I came back home for good. A relationship in Boston had ended badly, one of those stories where you give more than you ever should have. I returned with my savings nearly drained and a battered Honda Civic full of hand-me-down furniture. Nana was getting older then. Her mobility was declining, and she wanted help maintaining the house. I moved in to support her, promising I'd stay until she got better. That stay turned into 5 years. I didn't just live there, I restored that house. I refinished the floors myself, stripping them late into the night with a rented sander from Lowe's. I replaced all the light fixtures, rewired the pantry, and even learned basic plumbing thanks to YouTube tutorials. Every paycheck I earned as a freelance copywriter went right back into making Nana's home safer, brighter, warmer. And Madison? She visited maybe once every few months. When she did, she'd bring wine and pose for selfies with Nana, captioning them things like, 3 generations of strong women, even though she'd leave before dinner. I tried not to resent it. I told myself she was busy, that she showed love in other ways. But Nana saw it too. "I know who's here for me," she whispered one night, her voice thin with age as I tucked a quilt around her shoulders. "This house sees it too." When Nana passed away, it felt like the entire house sighed with her. I found her early in the morning, peaceful, still, one hand resting on a photo of the two of us in the kitchen, making peach cobbler. There was no drama, no chaos. Just silence. I called the ambulance, then my parents, then Madison. She showed up in heels. She was crying loudly, hugging everyone and snapping photos of Nana's roses. That night, as I sat on the porch swing drinking tea from Nana's chipped mug, Madison plopped down beside me and said, "So what happens now? With the house, I mean." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She twirled a strand of her bleached hair around her finger and said, "Well, Nana always said it'd be ours. You know, like both of ours." I felt my stomach twist. Madison, she left it to me. In her will. She laughed. "No, that's not what she meant. She had a lawyer draw it up. I didn't even know until last month." For a split second, her face changed, just a flicker. Then the smile returned. "Well, we'll figure it out." That was the first time I felt it. That edge in her tone. I tried to let it go. But things started happening, little things at first. She showed up unannounced to check on the house, sometimes bringing prospective buyers just to see what it could be worth. She told the neighbors she was handling the estate. I told myself I was overreacting, until one afternoon, I found her in Nana's bedroom, going through her jewelry drawer. She looked up and said, "I thought I'd take a few keepsakes. You don't mind, right? I mean, we're family." And still, I said nothing. I just swallowed it. But a few days later, I installed cameras inside the house. Quiet ones. Just in case. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I finally realized I couldn't afford to. I wanted to believe it was just grief. That Madison was acting out because she missed Nana too. That her sudden presence in my life, in my house, was her way of coping with the loss. But grief doesn't come with realtors. About a month after Nana's funeral, Madison started bringing people over without telling me. I'd come home from the grocery store and find strangers in the hallway, walking around, inspecting the crown molding I had hand-painted with Nana just 2 summers ago. "Oh, hey, Madison would chirp, clipboard in hand. "Just a quick walkthrough. These folks are looking to invest in historical properties." I told them this one might be up for grabs. "Up for grabs?" I asked, holding a bag of milk and eggs, frozen in place. She blinked. "You know what I mean. It's such a big house for just one person." No apology. No explanation. She just swept right past me and started discussing square footage in the living room. I followed her out after the couple left and said, "Don't do that again. This is my home, Madison." She didn't even flinch. "We both grew up in this house, Emily. You think Nana meant for you to hoard it like some antique." I had to force my hands not to shake. She left it to me. "It's in writing." She gave me a fake smile nod, like she was humoring a child. "Sure. But that doesn't mean we can't share the blessing." It was the way she said it, like I was being selfish for respecting Nana's wishes. From then on, she started pushing the boundaries more and more. She'd show up on weekends to pick up a few of her things. Some old books, a blanket, a painting she swore used to hang in her childhood room. One time, I found her moving a dresser out the front door. I stopped her. "Where are you going with that?" "Oh, this? It was Nana's." I thought it'd look cute in my place. You didn't ask, she scoffed. You're seriously going to gatekeep a piece of our grandmother? I'm asking for basic respect. Her face hardened. Funny, considering how little of that you've shown lately. Then she got in her car and left. I stared at the empty spot in the hallway for 10 minutes before I moved. I called my mom that night. Madison's taking things from the house. She's telling people she might be selling it. There was a long pause. Then my mother sighed and said, Honey, just let it go. It's not worth the fight. She's lying, Mom. She's grieving. Let her process it. She's manipulating the situation. There's nothing to process about that. But my mom stayed silent. That silence? That was louder than any defense. Things escalated. I got a letter in the mail from a real estate office, following up on interest expressed regarding the property at 83 Wisteria Lane. Madison had listed the house. Without my permission. I called the agency and gave them a legal warning. Sent them a copy of the deed Nana had transferred to me before she passed. They dropped the listing within 48 hours. When I confronted Madison, she laughed. You're being dramatic, she said, swirling wine in her glass at a family barbecue. It was a simple mistake. Paperwork gets messy, you know? You forged ownership. I inquired about possibilities. It's criminal, Madison. She shrugged. Then take me to court. Everyone at the party looked away like they hadn't heard a thing. It was always like that. Madison created the fire, and I got burned alone. My friend Lila, my best friend since college, came down for a weekend visit. She was the first person who truly saw what was going on. She's gaslighting the hell out of you, Lila said, her arms crossed as we sat on the back porch. This isn't normal cousin behavior. I laughed bitterly. What's normal when your family plays favorites? Oh, this goes beyond favoritism. This is strategic theft. I nodded toward the camera I had hidden in the hallway. That's why I installed those. I have one in Nana's bedroom too. And the dining room. Lila raised a brow. You serious? I didn't want to, but she's been going through files. Her name's not on anything, but she wants to make it look like it is. Lila squeezed my hand. Good. Keep everything. Document everything. A few weeks later, I found Madison sitting in the living room with Uncle Doug, her dad, and a briefcase on the coffee table. They both looked up as I walked in. Emily, Uncle Doug said smoothly. We were just discussing options. What options? He opened the briefcase slowly. See, Madison's thinking long-term. This house could be converted into a boutique B&B. Historic, charming, profitable. A great way to keep Nana's memory alive and give back to the community. I stared at them both. She left it to me. I said, voice tight. You know that. Doug held up a hand. Let's not get caught in the weeds of legalities. Family is about unity. I looked at Madison, whose expression was smugly serene. I'm not turning Nana's home into a hotel. Madison stood up. Then maybe it's time we involved the rest of the family. Let's see what everyone else thinks. That was the start of her campaign. She started calling extended family, telling them I was hoarding the house, saying Nana wanted it shared, and that I was becoming unstable since her death. She needs help, she told my Aunt Valerie on speakerphone once when I was in the room. She's grieving irrationally, refusing to let anyone in. I walked in mid-call and said, I'm not irrational, and I'm standing right here. She didn't even pause. See? That's what I mean. And just like that, the family began to splinter. Some reached out with passive comments. I'm sure there's a peaceful way to solve this. Nana loved you both equally. Maybe you two just need time. Time? Time wasn't fixing the locks Madison kept changing behind my back. Time wasn't returning the heirlooms she took. Time wasn't making people believe me. I filed a police report. Not because I thought anything would come of it, but because I needed documentation. I sat in a small office, hands shaking, explaining that my cousin had begun entering my home without permission and removing items that didn't belong to her. She has a key? The officer asked. She made a copy before Nana passed. I didn't know until I saw her walk in one morning while I was brushing my teeth. He raised a brow. You sure she doesn't have rights to the property? I pulled out the notarized deed and the copy of Nana's will. She has nothing. Except lies. He took it seriously after that. Gave me advice about filing for a no trespass order. I didn't want it to come to that. But I was tired of being the only one protecting what was already mine. The last straw was the church fundraiser. It was held at the Maplebrook Community Center. Dozens of families, neighbors, local officials. Madison stood in front of everyone and made a speech. She was raising funds for the Rose House, a future women's shelter she claimed would be built in Nana's honor, using my house as the location. She even printed mock-ups of the renovation plans, with the front porch and garden digitally redesigned. She always told me I'd carry on her legacy, Madison said, voice trembling as fake tears welled up. This house has always felt like my true beginning. People applauded. Someone actually handed her a $5,000 check. I stood in the back, frozen, hands balled into fists. And I knew what had to be done. I just had to press play. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of day where the sky hangs heavy, gray, and undecided. I had just gotten back from a grocery run when I noticed it, the sold sign out front. At first, I thought it had to be some prank. Some sick joke. I parked, got out slowly, and walked over to it. Red letters. Fresh ink. Planted in the yard right next to Nana's rosebush. Inside the house, Madison stood in the foyer, holding a clipboard, talking to a man in a navy blazer with a clipboard of his own. What is this? I said, my voice sharper than I'd heard it in months. She looked up, smiled.
Oh, hey.
Don't freak out. It's just a formality. A formality? I repeated. The buyers wanted a photo. You know, the whole we bought our dream home thing. It's good PR. And technically, they haven't signed the final deed yet, so you're still, well, sort of in the loop. My vision went white. My throat tightened. You listed my house. You accepted an offer. Without my consent. She rolled her eyes. Emily, for the love of God. Stop saying my house. Nana would have never wanted it sitting here like some frozen time capsule. We're doing something good here. She gestured toward the man, who gave me an uncomfortable smile and extended his hand. Hi, I'm Greg Fulton. I own Fulton Estates. We specialize in multi-use properties. Madison told us this place was already cleared legally. We're planning to convert it into an artist collective/event space. I didn't shake his hand. I stared at her. I didn't agree to this. I own this house. She gave a laugh with no warmth. Technically, that's under review. I blinked. What? Madison pulled out a folded stack of papers from her leather folder. We've filed a petition to challenge the will, citing undue influence and questionable capacity. You know, with Nana being sick and all. The court date's in 3 weeks. Didn't you get the notice? My stomach turned. You forged that challenge. She was of sound mind. Her lawyer said so. Let the courts decide, she said, like it was the weather. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Nana's old recliner, curled under her patchwork quilt, clutching the bracelet she'd given me when I graduated. The rain tapped the window like fingers drumming impatience.
And I cried.
For the house. For Nana. For the way everyone had watched this unfold and said nothing. My parents had offered only hollow words. Don't escalate. Maybe try mediation. You're both hurting. No one understood that this wasn't just about a house. It was about truth. It was about years of unpaid labor, of caregiving, of sweat and plaster dust, and nights I sat beside Nana's bed while Madison was out taking selfies with strangers at networking events. It was about Nana choosing me and everyone else pretending that didn't happen. 3 days later, I got the call from my lawyer. Emily, we need to talk. Madison's team is trying to freeze the deed until court. What does that mean? It means you can't make any property decisions until after the hearing. They're trying to argue joint interest. She has no legal claim. She's arguing moral claim. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went to my laptop, opened the files from my home security system, and began compiling. I had video of her entering the house without notice. Audio of her bragging on the phone to a friend about how Emily's too soft to fight. Clips of her removing jewelry, rifling through Nana's desk drawers, even one where she tried on Nana's old fur shawl and posed in the mirror saying, "This will look perfect at the Rose House launch." I timestamped. I labeled. I created folders. Then I sent them to my lawyer with the subject line, "Proof of fraud, every lie in her own words." The court hearing came faster than expected. I wore a navy dress, modest heels, and Nana's bracelet. Madison walked in like she was attending a fundraiser, heels clicking, hair perfect, a polished grin on her face. The judge was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a no-nonsense tone. Madison's lawyer made the argument first. He called my inheritance a disputed transfer, said that Nana's cognitive health was declining and that her intentions were unclear. That shared family memory pointed to the house being equally meant for Madison. When it was my lawyer's turn, he stood calmly and said, "We have 3 key pieces of evidence. The notarized deed transfer 6 months before Rose Harper's passing, signed medical evaluations of her mental competence, and several video and audio recordings that contradict the plaintiff's claims." He nodded to me. I stood. The screen turned on. The first clip played, Madison in the living room, telling her friend on speakerphone, "She's so naive. I'll wear her down. That house will be mine by the end of the year." Madison's face paled. The second, her stuffing jewelry into a bag and whispering, "Nana won't need these where she's going." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The third, her on the phone with the realtor saying, "Don't worry, the paperwork's technically in her name now, but once the court sides with me, we're golden." The judge paused the video. "Miss Keller," she said, her voice flat, "you are aware you did not legally own the house during these conversations?" Madison stammered. I was told. You told others it would be yours soon, despite documentation stating otherwise. That's premeditated misrepresentation. I thought it was what Nana wanted, and yet she didn't say that in the will, nor in the deed transfer, nor to any verified witness. The judge turned to me. "Miss Harper, thank you for your meticulous evidence. Do you have anything else to add?" I swallowed. Then I said, "My grandmother told me to protect her home, not from strangers, but from the people who'd try to rewrite her love. This wasn't about entitlement. It was about history, about care, about showing up. I didn't earn the house because I'm older. I earned it because I was there." The room went still. The judge gave a slow nod. "I've heard enough." Judgment was ruled in my favor. Madison's petition was dismissed as fraudulent. She was given a cease and desist, and any future attempts to claim the house could result in charges. I walked out of that courtroom into the sunlight, breathing for the first time in weeks. Lila was waiting for me on the steps, holding 2 iced coffees. I took mine, shaking slightly. "She tried to steal everything," I said. "But she failed," Lila replied, wrapping an arm around me. "You didn't just prove it was yours. You reminded them who Nana was." I smiled. Not because I had won, but because the house was finally quiet again. I was tired of shrinking. I had spent most of my life trying to be the peacekeeper, the one who didn't ruffle feathers, who forgave quickly, who held her tongue for the sake of keeping the family intact. But that version of me? She was gone. Now, I was done watching someone else wear my sacrifices like trophies and twist my life into their stepping stone. The morning of the meeting, I stood in front of my mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Not because I looked different, but because for the first time in years I felt my spine. Straight.
Strong.
Aligned with the truth. I wore a simple navy suit. Not flashy, not soft. Just powerful. My hair pulled back, face clean, eyes wide open. I wasn't going there to beg. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to speak clearly and let the truth shake the walls. The setting was perfect in its cruelty. My aunt's dining room. The same room where Madison and I used to sit as girls, drinking lemonade from mason jars and planning our futures. Now, it was the stage for the final act. Madison was already there, sitting with her arms folded, her lips pursed in that smug little line she thought made her look composed. There were others too, Aunt Ruth, Uncle Don, and my younger cousin Tyler, who looked like he would have rather been anywhere else. And then, at the head of the table, sat the mediator I'd hired. Not a lawyer, but a conflict resolution specialist who came highly recommended. Because I didn't want blood. I wanted acknowledgement. I sat down slowly. Let the silence linger. Let them all feel the tension. I wasn't going to dissolve for once. I'm not here to fight, I began, my voice calm. I'm here to tell the truth. And to ask that you listen. Madison rolled her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I opened the folder I'd brought with me and placed 3 items on the table. 1. The deed to the house with my name, my signature, my payment schedule. 2. A printed transcript of the recordings verbatim. 3. And a USB stick which I plugged into the TV on the far wall. Everyone turned as I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. Clear as a bell. Yeah, I mean technically it's hers, but she wouldn't know what to do with it without me. She doesn't read the fine print anyway. That was just the start. The clips continued. Her boasting to her friend about how she helped me by cleaning up the paperwork, and how no one would ever find out because family doesn't sue family. I didn't look at her. I looked at Aunt Ruth, whose face drained of color. At Tyler, who mouthed a quiet whoa. When the last clip played, where Madison laughed and said, I mean, it's not like she'll ever call me out. She's too soft. I pressed pause. Then I turned back to her. I'm not soft anymore. My voice didn't crack. It didn't need to rise. It landed like a gavel on a courtroom bench. She blinked. I continued. You tried to steal what I built. And when I didn't react, you got bolder. You thought silence was weakness. But it was me giving you space to correct yourself. I leaned forward. You didn't. The mediator spoke up next. Calmly. Professionally. Given the evidence and the clear ownership, I'd recommend a formal acknowledgement and a public apology from Madison. If not, legal action is very much a valid next step. Madison's lips parted, like she wanted to spit something venomous, but no words came out. Because she knew. The proof was airtight. And worse, her audience had heard every second. Still, I didn't need her to fall apart. I didn't want her punished. I wanted my power back. And in that moment, I had it. I stood, collected my documents, and turned to face her one last time. You may keep lying to yourself, I said, but you don't get to lie about me anymore. And with that, I walked out. No screaming. No tears. No begging. Just a woman who finally stopped asking for permission to be right. Outside, the sun felt different. Warmer. I breathed in deeply. Not like someone escaping, but like someone arriving. For a while after that confrontation, everything was eerily quiet. No phone calls. No texts. No awkward family chain messages. It was like I had detonated something sacred, and now everyone stood back, stunned by the crater I left behind. But I didn't feel like a destroyer. I felt clean. Empty, in the best way. Like someone had finally scraped off years of dried-on resentment from my skin. Still, I'd be lying if I said the silence didn't sting a little. Aunt Ruth didn't call. Tyler didn't check in. Not even a short, I didn't know, sorry, from anyone. I guess they were processing. Or maybe too afraid to pick sides. Or maybe, just maybe, they already had, and it hadn't been mine. Madison, on the other hand, did reach out. 3 days after the confrontation, she sent me an email. No subject line. No greeting. You really had to humiliate me like that? In front of everyone. That was all. No apology. No ownership. Just that classic Madison pivot, when caught red-handed, focus on how she felt, not what she did. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I'd already said everything that mattered. And because responding would have meant slipping back into the dance we'd always done, me appeasing, her denying. That show was canceled. The funny thing is, the real aftermath wasn't in what happened immediately after the confrontation. It was what started unfolding weeks later. Little trickles of truth started flowing in from unexpected places. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me on Instagram. Saw what happened. I always knew something was off. Good on you. One of Madison's old friends, who I barely knew, commented under a photo I posted with a subtle but knowing, "So glad the truth's finally out." And then there was Aunt Ruth. After nearly a month of silence, she showed up at my door. No call. No warning. Just stood there, clutching a Tupperware container, like a peace offering. "I made that casserole you used to like," she said, her voice thin. "I thought maybe we could talk?" I let her in. Because despite everything, I still cared. She sat at my kitchen table like it was foreign land. "I didn't know," she started, looking down at her hands. "I knew there was tension, sure. But I thought you two just had different styles." "I didn't realize," she trailed off, ashamed. "You didn't want to realize," I corrected gently. "You saw enough. You just didn't ask questions." She nodded slowly. "You're right." And for the first time, I heard it. An admission. A small ripple of accountability. She stayed for an hour. Told me how Madison had been spinning a different story for years. That she always framed herself as the responsible one, the adult in the room. And I, apparently, was always a little scattered, too idealistic, a sweet girl who meant well, but didn't really know how to handle things. That stung more than I thought it would. But I didn't let it sit. I wasn't scattered, I told her. I was surviving. I was building something from nothing. Alone. She nodded again. "I see that now. I'm sorry." And this time, I believed her. The weeks that followed were strange in the way spring is strange after a brutal winter. Not everything blooms right away. But the frost is gone, and the soil starts to feel alive again. I started noticing the quiet strength in my own life, things that had always been there, but I'd overlooked. The network of friends who'd cheered me on from the sidelines. The clients who stuck with me when my name was smeared. The coworkers who said, "We always knew you were the real deal." I began walking taller. And more than anything, I felt lighter. Because I wasn't dragging a secret behind me anymore. I wasn't shrinking to make other people comfortable. I wasn't living someone else's version of my story. I was mine again. Madison didn't apologize. Not then. Maybe not ever. But she did go quiet. From what I heard, she pulled back from most family events, tried to refocus on her own ventures. Some relatives whispered that she was embarrassed. Others said she was hurt. I didn't engage. Because her pain wasn't mine to manage anymore. And in that detachment, I found healing, not because she suffered, but because I stopped giving her the power to control how I healed. Truth has a way of echoing, even in rooms where no one wants to admit they heard it. It shakes foundations. It shifts loyalties. It breaks illusions. But more importantly, it sets you free. And that freedom? It was worth every second of the storm that followed. A few months later, I received a call from a law firm. It was about my grandmother's estate. Apparently, in the final months of her life, Grandma had rewritten her will. She never told anyone, not Aunt Ruth, not the cousins, and certainly not Madison. I sat in the lawyer's office, heart thudding, as he read the updated clause aloud. To my granddaughter, who has always carried herself with grace even in silence, I leave the bulk of my estate and the house I was born in. I blinked. What? He smiled gently. She made the changes quietly. She even hand-wrote a letter that was sealed and notarized. "It's yours, if you'd like to read it." My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Grandma's writing was a little shaky, but still neat and unmistakable. "I always saw you, sweetheart. Even when others didn't. You never demanded, never manipulated, never betrayed. You simply kept showing up. That kind of heart deserves more than just recognition. It deserves protection." I couldn't hold back the tears. Not because of the inheritance, but because someone had finally said it. Out loud. In writing. That I was worthy. It felt like the universe had spoken through her, balancing scales that had been tilted far too long. The house was beautiful. Old, with creaky floors and sun-washed windows. It needed some work, but it felt alive. Like a place where I could finally rest. Where I could build something new without ghosts whispering doubts in every corner. I moved in 2 weeks later. painted the walls, ripped up the old carpet, planted herbs in the backyard. And for the first time in my life, I felt rooted. Not tolerated. Not barely hanging on. But home. Madison found out through the family grapevine, of course. She never said a word to me. But I heard through Aunt Ruth that she'd been blindsided. That she had expected everything. That she had planned for everything, down to the furniture, the property, even listing it on Zillow early as a possibility. Poetic, isn't it? The woman who tried to write me out of the story got written out of the ending instead. But I didn't gloat.
I didn't post about it.
I didn't text her a smug emoji. Because true victory isn't loud. It's peaceful. It's when you no longer need to prove anything. And I didn't. What I did do, though, was start something new. In that old house, I opened a small community workspace for young women starting their own businesses. Women like me, who had been told they didn't belong at the table, or who had their ideas hijacked by someone louder. We called it the real room. The tagline? Where the quiet ones run the show. The first open house, I stood at the doorway as women filtered in, hopeful, uncertain, excited. And I saw myself in all of them. Every version of me, the overlooked daughter, the silent striver, the underestimated dreamer. Only now I was the one welcoming them in. And just like that, everything came full circle. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation from the people who once ignored me. I had built my own legacy. And this time, no one could steal it. Here's what I've learned. Love that has to be chased isn't love, it's performance. And family that only claims you when it's convenient isn't family, it's politics. For years, I thought I had to shrink myself to be accepted. Smile smaller. Speak softer. Be agreeable. Useful. Easy to overlook. I thought that was the price of belonging. But all that ever did was teach others how to treat me like an option. The truth is, sometimes your bloodline will deny you just so they can preserve their own narrative. They'll pretend you're invisible so they don't have to confront their own jealousy, or their guilt, or their failure to love you properly. But your worth is not a group decision. It's not something voted on in kitchens and family meetings behind your back. It's in how you show up every day with kindness even when it's not returned. It's in the way you keep your integrity when others choose manipulation. It's in how you rise, quietly, consistently, without needing to ruin anyone to feel seen. I didn't win because I got the house. I didn't even win because of the inheritance. I won because I broke the cycle. Because I chose self-respect over desperation. Because I walked away when staying would have meant betraying myself. You don't need to yell to be powerful. You don't need to fight to prove your strength. Sometimes, the deepest power comes from simply refusing to fold, even when every hand around the table is trying to push you out of the game. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the outsider in your own story, please hear this. You are not unworthy. You are not unlovable. And you are not alone. There's a quiet revolution happening, one person at a time. It's made of people like us. People who've been betrayed, but chose healing. People who've been shut out, but built their own doors. People who've been doubted, but kept dreaming